Right then, my friends, I've got a feeling that you're going to enjoy this video a lot more than the one where I said I was going to sell the boat. I'm keeping it. Anyway, let's untangle this mess and get stuck in. If you don't want to have to watch this really long video where I witter on and on about houses and boats, here's the short version. I'm staying with the boat. I will be living on the boat for an indefinite period of time. Hopefully you'll enjoy that. I still believe 100% that it's the sensible and correct thing to do to invest in property for that sort of security for the future, but that's a whole thing I witter on about in the video. So I may still go into something like some sort of rental scheme where I buy the house but I still live on the boat as if nothing's ever changed, so I just happen to own a property. Similarly, I may well just stick with the boat and just keep saving and saving and saving, as I am a big fan of doing, and ultimately at some point march into an estate agent, slam my checkbook on the desk and say, give me that house. Anyway, let's get stuck into the video. Hello there folks, I'm Dan Brown from Sort of Interesting, and today you're joining me on board good old narrowboat Abel's Ark, or as I like to call it, my home for the foreseeable future. So it's a bit of a busy day out on the canal. As you can probably tell, there's sun streaming in from the sky after some extraordinarily wet weather last week. So we've got boats coming up and down, there's a water point just over there, so might have some disturbances while I'm filming here, but that's all part of it. So, what on earth's going on here? I was selling the boat, now I'm not. Well, that pretty much sums it up. Right, thanks for tuning in. I'll get back to you soon. Of course, just joking. Anyway, let's have ourselves to think seriously now for a second. So, my original plan, as I mentioned in a previous video, was that I would have the boat up for sale by this point in the year. I'd be renting somewhere out in my hometown of Oswestry for a sort of temporary period, maybe 6 months, more likely 12 months or so though. Well, the boat had a chance to sell and I had a chance to move to a full-time job. Ultimately, the idea being that once the boat was sold, that would be a load of money that I could chuck in with my savings for a big fat deposit on a house, and the full-time job would help to convince a bank that I was a functioning adult and I could be allowed a mortgage to buy said property. The timescale was by the end of 2019, I would not be necessarily buying a house, but in a position that if something came onto the market, I could go, right, I want that, I'm going to get it, and get it. Of course, as you can probably tell, the fact that I'm on the boat, it's not up for sale, and I'm not renting anywhere out in my hometown Oswestry, things have changed somewhat. So there's a few reasons for this. Now, firstly, I think it's important to just give the basic basis of where I'm looking at all of this from when I'm making these decisions in my life. Now, I'll also just mention here, this video isn't going to be a normal vlog where I'm out and about doing stuff. This is all about talking to the camera, loading you up with a load of information and insight into my life, how it is, my life on the boat, and why I'm making these decisions, and well, again, maybe food for thought for other people in similar situations or potentially looking at boat life. So the first important thing to consider, and it's something I've mentioned previously and many times, it's not as if I was going into this decision to buy a house from a position of not enjoying being on the boat. And that's a huge thing, because rather than having the motivation of like, oh, I don't like the boat, oh, I want to get off the boat, which would be obviously its own huge driving factor that would be there every moment that I was on the boat thinking, oh, I've got to get off, got to get off. Instead, as I say, me wanting to buy a house is following the head rather than the heart. I have no issue with boat life. I thoroughly enjoy it, and I think it's well documented, especially on board Abel's Ark, which compared to good old narrowboat Tilly when I lived on her, which was a 30-foot boat with 15 feet of indoor space, the novelty to be on Abel's Ark with my own separate bedroom and stuff, it's extraordinary luxury. Not compared to most boats, but admittedly compared to my previous boat life, this is incredible. There's so many things about boat life that I thoroughly enjoy. Now, as I say, the idea of buying a house was following my head and getting that long-term security of bricks and mortar and going into what I'm going to describe as the second half of my life, in a good position where I've put as much down as a deposit as I can, got a mortgage as close to zero as I can physically get it, and then I'm heading into my sort of 40s and so on in that position where I'm practically already an outright homeowner. And again, there's lots of positives and negatives to say here, but we won't get too much into it because I want to focus more on why I've decided against it and why I'm holding back. What my plan is now, basically, to keep the boat, just keep rattling away money into my savings. Now, one of the reasons that I decided to sell the boat when I was selling it, like early on, and get rid of it sooner rather than leave it for another, I don't know, year or so, and that's basically because even though I've had this boat for a year, I still haven't had it out of the water, haven't had a hull survey done, haven't had it blacked or anything like that, which at the very least I need this boat out of the water, surveyed and painted black. May need more work doing, but we'll deal with that if needs be. And well, now I'm keeping the boat, it's all good. So I was basically thinking, whatever money I spend on the boat, I'm not going to see back in the selling price. So I might as well just put it up for sale, let somebody else buy it, and then deal with whatever they want to deal with, and so treat the boat as they see fit, basically. And my idea was it's going to cost me maybe 1,500, £2,000 for the boat to come out of the water, surveyed and blacked. And again, you might need to spend a bit more, put some steel on it here or there, something like that, who knows. And I was thinking, if I just sell the boat, I'm avoiding those costs and letting somebody else take on the hassle and that. Whereas in closer on closer inspection, with a sensible sort of calm view, and anybody out there who's watched my videos for a while may know I've got an absolute love and obsession, probably an unhealthy, unnatural obsession with finances and recording everything and working stuff out, and I've got spreadsheets that have all sorts of extraordinary data on them. Yes, spreadsheets, because I am an absolute nerd, can't you tell? And as I was planning out and plotting this sort of next 12 months moving back to dry land and so on, it just occurred to me, hang on, I'm saying I want to avoid the costs of doing up the boat, or not necessarily doing it up, but just doing the basic maintenance on the boat. However, if you consider, like, let's say for argument's sake, if you went and rented somewhere on dry land for 500 quid a month, obviously you're going to have bills and all sorts of extra stuff, but just to call it 500 a month as a base figure, that's immediately £6,000 you're spending in a 12-month period. And of course, things go wrong and all sorts of other things could crop up. And it was just that mad realisation of like, hang on, I'm saying I want to get rid of the boat as soon as possible so that I don't have to do any of the work on it and I can save the money. Even to the extent that last month I actually bought a 6-month boat licence instead of the full 12 months, which, now I'm keeping the boat, means that I've actually spent more on those 6 months per month, if you break down the lump sum figure, than if I just bought a 12-month licence. It's like an descending scale. Obviously, the more months you buy and pay for up front, the cheaper it is to buy those bulk lot altogether. So again, I was thinking, well, I'm not going to have the boat in 6 months. That's how dead set I was that I was still selling the boat, even only like 4 weeks or so ago. And of course, now, again, that's just an illustration of the penny pinching and the thinking I was of like, right, let's save every possible thing I can possibly save and scrape together and chuck into gold or premium bonds or whatever else. So that was the real sort of big turning point of me looking and thinking, why am I going to sell the boat now when I'm not ready to buy a house? Admittedly, under that previous plan, the boat had to be sold so that I had all of the money that I could possibly get together to put down as a big fat deposit on a house. So that's why I was sort of wanting to sell the boat and what have you. But then, when I actually took a moment or two to look at it sensibly, you've got that thing then of like, hang on a minute, if I save £2,000 on not doing up the boat, I'm going to be £7,000 out maybe by the next 12 months time from moving off the boat into a rented place. So there was the mathematical thing that immediately hit me, and if there's one thing that hits me to the core, it's numbers with a pound sign next to them. Anyway, in all seriousness though, another thing, and this is something I was going to keep, I've mentioned it, but I was going to keep it relatively secret when it actually happened, but I've also been looking to buy a small boat. I know I've on a boat, I've already got a boat, what's going on? So, as I said when I left Narrowboat Life on Narrowboat Tilly, I always regret not just getting a small GRP cruiser style boat. It's just a little one, like 20 odd feet, so it'd cost hardly anything to put it in a marina all year round, and especially if you're not living on it, so you don't really care which marina it is, so you can go to a cheap marina and stuff. And of course, because it's a short boat, it's not going to cost too much. GRP doesn't need to come out of the water for blacking and things like that, so hopefully it'll be lower cost in the maintenance terms. And I always wish that I'd done that. That was my original plan when I left Narrowboat Life the first time, to get a little boat like that so I could go for weekends, evenings, weeks, holidays, just a general trip to get on the canal and have a cheap way of doing so. Now, my plan was I'm going to buy another one, or I'm going to buy a little boat. So basically this would still be up for sale, and there'd be this insane situation where I was saying I was leaving the canals and I was going to buy a house and that, but I'd actually end up, until this boat sold, owning 2 boats, which I thought, you know what, that's not a sensible situation to be in, to be paying costs and that on 2 boats at the same time. And the idea was that I was going to keep it secret when I'd actually bought one. So I'd have like the final fond farewell of this boat and do a video saying, well, it's gone now, it's sold, blah, blah. And then I'd go, but don't worry. And then it'd cut to me on my other boat going, because we're still going to get out on the canal, and it'll all be very cheesy and very tacky, but humorous, hopefully just enough to bear, it's for you to grin and bear the tackiness of it all. So obviously that plan then was making me think, hang on, I'm going to sell one boat, I'm going to have this renting situation, and I'm going to then have another boat that's going to cost me maybe, like, I don't know, call it 5 to 10 grand on a little boat. I wouldn't want to get one that's really completely and utterly basic and completely battered and that, but I wouldn't want anything fancy because it's just a boat for fun, basically. So then I ultimately just came to that thing of like, why am I selling a boat to buy a boat and fork out a load of money in rent when I've already got a great deal of security, as somebody was giving me a good old talking to on the towpath recently, in the fact that by just continually living like this and saving and saving and saving, obviously it's ultimately pushing me ever more towards that, well, you got a big fat deposit. One of the benefits of staying on the boat and just saving and saving and saving until ultimately maybe sometime down the line I just am like, you know what, I'm just buying a house and I just buy it and keep the boat. I mean, that's the ultimate aim here, I suppose, long run. That's the ultimate thing. Just keep the boat. I can spend as much as I want doing stuff to the boat if I want, because I'm going to have it indefinitely, and ultimately at some point just pick up a house. You've got 2 situations that helps with. First of all, can keep an eye on the economy and the general housing market. There's going to be some sort of crash in the next, my belief, 5 to 10 years. It's like after the 2008 global financial meltdown, very little has been done to solve it. And, well, look at the way the internet has absolutely decimated so many industries. If we have another serious financial crisis and places start closing down, then my goodness me, you're going to see high streets and situations that are never going to come back to the way they were. Even now, I mean, in my hometown, there's empty shops that have been empty for years and years and years. And again, the internet's made it very difficult for standard old style business to bounce back. But that's another sort of rant we can get onto in a different time. So there's a potential that as savings go up, also house prices might come down to meet me somewhere in the middle, which obviously is pie in the sky and could be absolutely anything. The economy could absolutely take off like a rocket, and it could be absolutely solid, and prices could skyrocket, and I'll be here going, well, I can't afford to buy one now anyway. These are the risks that you take, but there's a significant thing that makes my life a lot easier. And that is that by trying to get a mortgage and trying to obviously have one specific full-time job that the bank would use as their sort of evidence of, oh yeah, he's earning proper money that isn't flipping make-believe, oh, he does videos on YouTube and stuff like that. By not having that sort of pressure to get that one single job, I can have 2 part-time jobs, which are far easier to come by, and of course, in my opinion, make life far more enjoyable and far better, because you're not constantly going off to one place in particular or this place or that place. And as well, you get that extra security of if something happens at one job, you've still got another, or vice versa. And it gives you that sort of, oh, interesting boat coming past. Sorry, it sounded like a train for a second there. Of course, you've got that other element of being able to go, well, if I have a second part-time job, then you can potentially at some point keep looking for another job and then leave one of those two jobs you've got and have another combination of two jobs. And ultimately, like I say, there's a lot of things to discuss, a lot of things to consider, and of course anything can happen. And just look at this last year that I've had. It's been absolutely madness. It's been awesome. I've thoroughly enjoyed so much of it. Oh, it's which one is that? Saturn and Buckton, maybe. The historic narrowboat's going past. Anyway, that's basically, I'm keeping the boat indefinitely. Ultimate situation would be buy a house and have the boat, and that's it. Thank you very much for watching this video. I know it's been a bit scattered and all over the place and a bit rambling. It's an extremely hot day. Please give me a break. Please do consider checking out the links in the description. Find my short boat life books for the Kindle as a paperback, and also a load of links to me posting all sorts of canal and boaty pictures and little snaps and stuff just all over the internet. Anyway, until the next time, my friends, have an absolutely fantastic day. Keep it interesting, keep it boat worthy, and of course, my friends, farewell.